All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to talk about sex-linked traits. In a previous set of notes, we talked about something called sex-influenced or sex-limited traits. And remember, we were talking about those having something to do with hormones. This time we're going to talk about traits that are actually carried on the sex chromosomes, and that's why they're called sex-linked traits. So first of all, I just want you to take a look at the number of chromosomes in this data table here. I think it's really interesting and unique. The only thing that you need to find out or need to realize about this data table is just that the number of chromosomes is absolutely critical to that species. So if that species has an extra chromosome or a missing chromosome, it leads to some kind of a genetic syndrome. But as far as the meaning behind those number of chromosomes, we don't have to draw a whole lot of meaning. If you look at a horse, they have 64 chromosomes, whereas humans only have 46 chromosomes. Does that mean horses are more advanced than humans? No. Dogs have 78 chromosomes. It's important that dogs have 78. It's important that humans have 46. Now, what we do want to focus on today, though, are the chromosomes that determine our sex. So two of the chromosomes are called the sex chromosomes, and they're referred to as the X and the Y chromosomes. All of the other chromosomes that we have are called the autosomes. There's 44 other chromosomes. Autosomes are a type of chromosome that are carried by males and females and have nothing to do with sex, biological sex. Keep in mind that gametes, and remember the word gametes refers to any sex cell, sperm, egg, or pollen. Remember that gametes have half the DNA, so human sperm or eggs would carry just 23 chromosomes, one from each pair of the chromosomes. All right, so we want to talk a little bit about gender. At this point, I'm not going to stop here. You can always go to your own notes and watch this video about what is gender. So sex and gender are two different things, and that's what this video addresses. So you can watch this on your own time. I won't take up time during this video to do that. And next. There we go. All right, so how is sex in humans determined? In general, sex is determined by the chromosomes. Females, biological females, have two X's in there, so that's called a female. Males have XY. However, and I sometimes say guys have Ys to help students remember that. However, it can be a lot more complicated than that. Sex determination is much more complicated. It's not always clear as just male and female in terms of biological sex. So males can have an X and a Y, or females can have an X and an X, but it's also possible to be just X, that's called Turner syndrome, or XXY, that's called Klinefelter's, or XYY, and it goes on and on and on from there. There's all kinds of different combinations. This can lead to differences in the physical formation of the body, so the genitalia. It can also change hormones and how the person presents, whether they present as male, female, or what we learned in that video, intersex. So when someone doesn't fit into the usual male-female categories of sex, they're called intersex. So if we take a look at this karyotype, that's what a photograph of the person's DNA is. Is this person a biological male or a biological female? So as we look through the chromosomes, we see that there are 23 pairs of chromosomes. One of each chromosome came from each parent. If you look down at the last pair of chromosomes, so you've got 22 in their matching set, and then it says an X and a Y, and you see that there's two, this is a kind of a tricky karyotype actually. There's two X chromosomes, so this individual would be considered a biological female. If the other chromosome was a Y chromosome, which is a very small chromosome, that's how you differentiate. This particular X chromosome happens to be bent. Not a big deal. It's still another X chromosome. But if there was just a tiny little Y chromosome there, then we would know that this individual was a biological male. All right, moving on. Some genes, of course, are carried only on the X chromosome, as are some genes just carried on the Y chromosome. But today we're just talking about the X chromosome. We refer to traits that are carried on the X chromosome as sex-linked traits. That's true also for the Y chromosome, but today we're just talking about the X chromosome. All right, sex-linked traits. There are a couple sex-linked traits that we want to make sure that you know. There are many sex-linked traits, but the ones that we want you to know, red-green colorblindness and hemophilia. Red-green colorblindness are people who can't differentiate between the colors red and green, but they can see other colors. And somebody with hemophilia has a bleeding disorder, so their blood doesn't clot properly. All right, so here's a statement, and let's see if we understand it. Since males have only one copy of the X chromosome, traditionally, on average, any traits found on the X, even recessive ones, are automatically expressed. What? Wait, what? What does that mean exactly? Why is that? All right, if you think about it, first of all, let's talk about biological females. How many alleles, and remember an allele is a form of the gene like a capital T or a lowercase t. How many alleles would a female have for the gene that determines red-green color blindness? Well, she gets 2. She gets 1 on each of her X chromosomes. The normal or full color gene, full color vision gene is a dominant trait, and the colorblind gene is recessive. The only way that a biological female could be colorblind is if she receives 2 copies of the defective gene, which is a pretty rare event. So if she has 2 copies of the dominant, we'd say she's homozygous dominant and she has full color vision. If she has a capital and a lowercase, she's heterozygous, but she still has full color vision. The only way to be red-green colorblind for a female is if both of her X's have the red-green colorblindness gene, a rare event. However, how many alleles for the same gene does the male receive? Remember that this gene is carried only on the X chromosome. Well, of course, he only gets 1 X chromosome typically. So if his X chromosome carries the gene for colorblindness, he automatically is colorblind, red-green colorblind, because he doesn't have a backup X chromosome like females do. Females have that second X chromosome so that if one has the colorblindness trait, she might not have it on the other, and it's a dominant. Regular vision or full color vision is a dominant trait, so she might have that second chromosome that can serve as sort of a backup for her. Statistically, inheriting 1 color blindness gene is much more likely inheriting 2. So men are much more likely to develop these recessive sex-linked traits than women are. Do you get that? Does that really make sense? Let's just say it in another way, or ask it in another way. Who is more likely to get a sex-linked trait? Men who only get 1 copy of the X chromosome, or women who get 2 copies of the X chromosome? I find that students really get mixed up on this because women are getting 2 copies of the X chromosome. Shouldn't they get the traits more often? And the answer is no. Men are more likely to get these traits because they don't have that backup X chromosome. So if 1 chromosome has, say, the red-green colorblindness gene or the hemophilia gene, they're for sure going to have that particular trait. All right, that's it. Be sure to watch that video on the difference between gender and sex and orientation, sexual orientation. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.